so easy for people to assume that having a big family is all difficulty and sacrifice all the time. What's something that others might think is hard, but yet it's turned out to be life-giving for you? Hello and welcome to the Connect to Marriage podcast. I'm Aaron and I'm your host for today's episode. If you're new here, we'd love for you to subscribe to the Connect to podcast on your favorite platform. You will discover engaging topics and conversations designed to strengthen your marriage. In each episode, we will tackle real questions couples ask about communication, conflict, and the everyday challenges of married life. Our hope is simple, that as you listen in, you'll grow closer, deeper, stronger in your marriage. In today's fast-paced, achievement-driven world, many couples are choosing to have fewer children or none at all as they juggle careers, finances, and personal goals. That's why today's conversation is such a refreshing and inspiring one. I'm pleased to have Chun Huan and Morica Liu here in the studio with us to chat about their personal journey raising 5 children. Welcome to the Connect 2 podcast, Chun Huan and Morica.
Hello, good to be here.
Hi, this is Morica.
It's great to have you with us. To start, could you share a little about yourselves?
Well, I have a day job as an accountant, kind of quite boring kind of work. At night, I get to play with my kids and do stuff with them.
I'm working part-time in the Polytechnic and also serving in church as well in Bible study groups.
Before we get into the details, could you share what having a big family means to you at its very core? Like, what's the heartbeat behind your family?
Well, I guess when you have a big family, everything is on a shared basis, right? You got to share the toilet, you got to share the bedroom, you got to share your clothes. I guess the thing that is always hovering around the family is we learn to share.
So most people can't even imagine like life with 5 children. What does a normal day look like in your home, Morica?
Maybe I'll go back as far as having the first kid. I wouldn't have imagined how it would be like even with 1 or 2 kids. And in fact, in my plan, it will be 3. And definitely when we have more than 3, it is quite scary at that point in time, and everything else kind of fall apart. Because it's like, the car doesn't fit, the house doesn't fit, and everything is like chaotic. And the kids are like 8 years apart, we have 5. And by the time we have the 5th kid, she kind of set everything into pace because that is how a big family is like. And then it's a step-by-step process.
Did I mention that I didn't tell her I was hoping to have 5? No, 7 actually.
Why is that so?
It came as a joke. Previously, when I was in junior college, friends were talking to me. So, in the future, what are you going to be like? What kind of family you're going to have? So I happened to say, yeah, good to have 7. Happened that many years after our marriage, Morica got to know this friend. And this friend mentioned to her, did Chun Huan ever tell you before that he hopes to have 7 kids?
Yep, and I guess by then it doesn't matter anymore because 5 and 7 is not too far off, and then things was just chaotic when the kids were then young. Spills was everywhere, clothes was never ending, and sleep was never sufficient.
Life was never a dull moment.
Yeah, in fact, that sounds like really a full, kind of day for most of the days that you have. But with so much happening, right? What were some, like perhaps systems or habits that help keep things sustainable, even if it's not obvious to outsiders?
I think one of the things we had to plan was family time and me time. Especially with such a big family, me time is really very precious. For us, in the past, when the kids are much younger, after dinner, we chase them all to the bedroom. And we have this habit, all 5 kids, you all sleep in one bedroom. The other bedroom that we have was reserved more for their play as well as studies. So we usually practice after dinner, after their shower, everybody go to the bedroom, you do your activities in the bedroom together, and after that, everybody goes to sleep, either after reading storybooks or things like that. Like the military style, lights out at 9. That's it. You can stay in the room, but kids, after that is daddy and mommy's time.
We have to kind of have a schedule every day, playtime in the afternoon, to burn out all their energy even dinner time at downstairs playground or at the pool so that, we can all burn out their energy by 8 p.m. when they're back, shower, and then reading time, and then go to bed. Because I usually fall asleep before them. Yeah.
Yeah, so, with all your good systems, like your habits of a schedule, lights out at 9, all these are good. But I believe every family also faces hurdles, right? I can imagine a child resistant to say, I don't want to sleep now, or I don't want to follow the schedule for today. What were some of the biggest challenges you face along the way?
Yeah, you're correct. Testing limits are some of the very common things that you will see from the kids. And that, I think, is very important for us to be clear. What are the limits? Of course, there are times where, you give and take a little bit. But again, you must be very clear. For example, lights out at 9. But maybe the oldest one say, I got something urgent to do. Okay, you give that leeway. But then that leeway does not apply to the rest. Yeah, so you need to be firm on that.
Yes, of course, there are certain challenges like having tuition on certain days, like as they grow older for education, we have to send them for classes and all that. But there are some things that we do agree and do set as a priority. Sunday is a time off for everybody, and we do not want to have any lessons on that day. And we will all rest on Sunday afternoon, and then Sunday morning we will go to church. So that was no compromise. But there was one time where, this particular Chinese class only happens on Sunday. And then we have to kind of give them up. And looking back, we didn't miss much because to set that as a priority.
So I can hear that there are challenges in terms of scheduling because there's so many people to manage, right? There's time to manage, there's emotions to manage. And in the midst of all these challenges, how do you manage to carve out time for each other as a couple? A lifetime of love and romance requires intentional effort and attention. Yet in times of busyness and with overwhelming priorities to tend to, our marriages can often take a back seat. No matter the state of your relationship today, we want to help you and your spouse thrive. Check out Connect 2, featuring specially created experiences and resources, our favorite selection of articles, top hits on our podcast, date ideas, conversation starters, and more to address the issues that are keeping you and your spouse apart, and to help you rekindle the joy of pursuing one another. Visit www.family.org.sg/connect2 today.
That's very important. It has to be intentional. In the past, we have little pockets here and there, like for example, after 9, that's the time for ourselves. Weekends, we try to see where we can chuck the kids somewhere. Library is a good place if you don't know where to go. Sometimes the zoo is also a good place. You let them run wild at the water playground and things like that. Then you kind of sit back and have a cup of coffee at that point of time. Maybe just at most, maybe 15 minutes. We do try to find time for each other as the kids grow older, whereby sometimes I go on business trips. And if it crosses a weekend, then Morica will try to fly in to just kind of join for the moment. But that's only possible if you can make arrangements to chuck your kids somewhere, which in today's context, not so easy, right? So friends, relatives are very important. Make sure you make good friends and good relatives. Anytime you snap on that, please help. So that's how we work.
Over the years, as the kids grow up, they kind of find their own social life. They have their sisters, and they have their own friends, and then they are also meaningfully engaged. And we treasure the time that we have together. I think we attended one of the marriage course that says no discussion after 10. So having time together doesn't always need to be resolving issues. Sometimes it can just be time together. Yeah.
So easy for people to assume that having a big family is all difficulty and sacrifice all the time. What's something that others might think is hard, but yet it's turned out to be life-giving for you?
Yes. I think the earlier days, not only physical strength, I think because of the number of children, the amount of work that has to be done, the organizing of the schedule and all, it has built me to be more disciplined because subsequently I could do some work like teaching and that schedule fit in. So I kind of have to plan my time so that I kind of also need to build myself up, in the midst of all the things that I need to do. And at the same time, because different kids has different characteristics, so it's not static all the time. So I learn different things through different parents, through different programs as they grow up, join different school groups, prayer groups and all that, and learning how to relate to them. And that builds me up as a person, how to listen, how to understand another person, and then how to use my time wisely. And as the kids now are not kids anymore, they're adult, and I can move on to my next, be it ministry, be it work.
Is there anything different now that your children are older, like in terms of relating with them, and how does your marriage, in a sense, perhaps model an example to them as well?
In the initial years, because we have 5, your house is just chaotic. Maybe now we are still chaotic in that sense, but when the kids are older, you are able to dialogue to them. And that helps in terms of communications. It's no longer a teaching to a child, but it's actually a sharing of ideas, of communicating different perspectives and views. So the way you handle your child changes as they grow older. They tend to see you more as a peer rather than the adult father who's always having to give them instructions. And I think that is important as we age and as our kids grow. We need to also change ourselves, how we handle our children, because they are now adults, for example, or teenagers. They have their own views, they have all ideas, they are exposed to so many things. And in certain ways, they are all more advanced than us. So we have to change to be a more open mind, to hear them out, to talk to them as though they are equal with you.
So I guess it goes back to far when they were young. Kind of have to have a vision of where you think you want your kids to be like when they are grown at adulthood. And then that is also where we divide our time out. We want them to flourish in educational, in social, in spiritual, all the different aspects, and also physical. So we have to carve out time deliberately for the different aspect of their growth. So as they grow up, sometimes we may not always agree on certain decisions, but I guess that is also a time where I have to learn to listen. Some of the responses I get from them is, "Mom, aren't you confident of how you bring us up?" That gives me a lot of assurance. Okay, that was what I taught them. And then now they're testing it out in what is in the real world. Of course, they stumble as well, but I kind of have to let them take over and make that decision, yeah.
That's so good. I hear that your children are actually seeing your example as husband and wife, how you live your lives and the lessons that you've taught, and now they're learning and they're applying it in the real world setting, and they're growing up, and now they are giving you feedback in a sense of how the things that you have taught them and how it applies to them in their lives. In each episode of the Connect 2 podcast, we take time to address a question that couples often ask about marriage. Now let's turn to today's listener's question, okay? It comes from a young wife who says, "We recently had our first child and have been struggling to find time to connect as a couple. There have been more fights and disagreements, and honestly, it makes things even harder to bear. Some days I feel like giving up. What can I do to get better?" It's such a heartfelt and relatable question. So what will you say to her?
Yeah, definitely it's an issue that is quite common to everybody. When you have a first kid, you really don't know what to do. There's no textbook that can prepare you for that. And a lot of times it's a trial and error. And it has to be a couple doing it together. Perhaps I like to look at it as another way, rather than trying to say, I don't have my own me time. Perhaps that me time is now what you call a couple time. You learn to work together to bring up this child that you are blessed with. Learning to understand the differences between you and your spouse. When the spouse needs that me time, for example, perhaps I would take up the heavier responsibility. For example, maybe my spouse is too tired after a day's work. When we recognize that, we take the initiative to say, "Honey, you go and rest. I'll struggle with my kids somehow." That is a way of giving both the kind of couple and me time, kind of a self-sacrificial way, because unfortunately, that's the situation that couples are faced. You got this kid that's crying all the time, you got to change the diaper. How then can you have that time? Is that one of you perhaps at that point of time takes on that heavier responsibility, and the other spouse, having rested, recognizes that, oh, my spouse actually sacrificed for me, and takes that initiative. So I think it's actually, in a way, it becomes a couple kind of effort together.
Yeah, I think from ladies' point of view is what most of the time we have many in many areas very opposite. We always do not agree. Yeah, because we're just very different. But I think what I would appreciate is someone who's listening, who could empathize. Yeah, may not agree with me, but even being able to listen and understand, that helps a lot. Similarly, for myself, I will learn how to listen what the other party is trying to say, and learning to be patient instead of insisting on what I feel is right, but listen and ponder over. And I guess that helps me, not to be overreacting to what I feel is right.
Thank you, Chun Huan and Morica, for sharing so authentically about your experience raising a big family. As we wrap up, looking back on your journey, what's one lesson or gift from raising a big family that you hope others will carry into their own lives?
If the house is in chaos, it's still okay.
It's a treasure not to miss it out and count the cost from the start. Yes, it costs time, it costs energy, it costs money and everything else, but the reward is definitely far greater than what I could imagine.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights. It's really a beautiful reminder that even in the busyness of family life, love and grace are really what holds us all together. And what you said, Morica, about it being a treasure. So thank you so much. In each podcast, we end off with a challenge, the couple challenge, and here's this week's challenge for you and your spouse. Before bed tonight, take just 2 minutes together, share one thing that was hard for you, and one thing that you truly appreciate about your spouse today. It's a simple practice, but it can open the door to deeper connection and gratitude in your marriage. We hope today's episode has been both helpful and encouraging. For more resources on family life and marriage, do visit our website at family.org.sg. Thank you for tuning in, and if you know someone who might benefit from this conversation, we would love for you to share this podcast with them. And don't forget to join us in the next episode when we'll continue the conversation with Chun Huan and Morica, exploring fresh questions and insights together. We look forward to having you with us again.